This is the IOA Podcast, a space for truth, tenderness, and becoming whole, one breath at a time. Welcome back, everyone, to the IOA Podcast, and I am super excited to be back with you all. I am Dr. Malaika, and this is the IOA Podcast. As I have said, if this is your first time with us, welcome. We are super excited to be able to go into episode number 21, which is the beginning of season number 2. And today we are going to be talking about how to begin again after grief and disappointment. So remember that this is a space where we return to ourselves, where we honor healing as a communal, cultural, embodied, and sacred activity. And if you've been with me since season 1, I want to say thank you and welcome back. Thank you for growing with me. Thank you for reflecting with me. And thank you for continuing to build this circle with me. As we begin season 2, I really couldn't think of a more honest place to begin than here. And one of the reasons why I say that is because I think about just all the questions that I've heard and had about how do we begin again? How do we deal with starting anew in a way that's not necessarily polished or performative, but in a way that is reflective of where I am. And that means that you can't erase what hurt you. You can't erase what allowed you to be here in this space. You can't erase what disappointed you and what exhausted you or what changed you. So, how are we going to do this? How do we begin after burnout, after grief, after we've been disappointed, after life has basically taught you what it doesn't have to look like what you imagined? So, after you've given some thought to this topic and carried all these different things, I wanted us to look at how even trying to be strong and standing in our strength feels like just another demand for us. And honestly, I just think about where we are in our country currently and just the things that we are dealing with, where we really are tired. We really don't have it. We are really grieving what this life used to look like. Some of us are grieving literal loss of family and connection, but we're also grieving the possibility of hope for things to be better. And how do we reimagine and how do we move forward in those moments? I think of a lot of people and how they're probably similar to me standing in this exact space, not necessarily at the beginning of something that looks promising and shining and new, but at the edge of trying to begin again, at the edge of returning to themselves and determining whether or not there's still enough hope, enough softness or courage or faith to take another step. And I want to say clearly at the beginning of this season that beginning again is not the same thing as pretending you were never hurt. Beginning again is not denial. It is not spiritual bypassing. It's not toxic positivity dressed up in a nice quote and a good playlist. Beginning again is a sacred return and is not starting from nothing. It's returning to what is actually true. That is what I want us to sit with today. This is very much one of the central truths in my book, Rooted in Resilience. And it's talking about healing from a place that's not always linear. It's not a linear climb. It's not always a straight line from the thing that was broken to that broken thing being fixed. It's not always neat and it's not always visible. Sometimes our healing often happens underground, quietly, slowly, in ways that the outside world would probably not celebrate. So that is part of what makes beginning again so hard, in my opinion, because many of us were taught to respect, what can be seen, the visible achievements, the clear breakthrough, that tidy testimony, the comeback story that has the beautiful bow put on it. But roots do not grow in public. Oftentimes they grow in darkness. They grow in silence. They grow under pressure and they grow in places where people probably would not applaud. And that matters because when life has worn you down, when grief has rearranged you, when disappointment has made you question your timing, your calling, and your energy, it may even make you question your worth. The temptation is to think that because nothing visible is happening, nothing sacred is happening. But that's not true. I want you to understand that some of the holiest work that can happen in your life is happening in these hidden places. Some of your deepest returns are going to happen in these quiet moments. Some of your most important becoming is happening before anybody can call it blooming. So today, I want us to talk about what it means to begin again by returning to the root. Don't look to perform. Don't look to fall under pressure to do a particular thing. Don't panic, but we're returning to the root, the thing that grounds you, the thing that remembers you, the thing that remains when all of the other noise falls away, because that is where the healing starts. So before we close out this opening segment, I want you to remember, as always, that we are here to support a work, and the only way we can do that is making sure that people are aware of what we have going on here. So make sure that you have liked and subscribed to this episode. Make sure that you are sharing it. Make sure that you're reaching out, because by doing that, not only does it let the algorithm know that we want more of this available to others, but it also puts it in the pathway for you to know when episodes are released here on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other places where the podcast can be found. So we are going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we are going to get into talking about burnout, grief, and disappointment. We will be back in just a second. Welcome back, everyone, to the pod. And we are super excited to go a little bit deeper into this particular episode. And so I wanted us to get into talking about naming what has changed us, because I think one of the hardest things about burnout is that it doesn't always announce itself and it doesn't come in dramatically. Sometimes burnout looks like just all out collapse. Sometimes it looks like tears in your car, forgetting simple things, resenting people you love, or feeling like even small tasks are too much for you to handle. But sometimes burnout is quieter than that. Sometimes burnout looks like functioning without feeling. Sometimes you're showing up without presence. You're accomplishing things, but there's no connection. You're moving through your day like the machine that you are. Then you have learned how to smile on command. And that burnout is not that you stopped working, it's that you stopped hearing and listening to yourself. You stopped noticing what your body needed. And so I want you to understand that when you stop trusting your own pace and when you stop checking to see whether or not your spirit is actually with you and aligned in your life, you are just maintaining. And that kind of burnout can be especially tricky because from the outside, it may still look like you are doing well. But inside, you know that that's not the truth. Inside, you know when your joy has gone quiet. Inside, you know when your yes is no longer honest. Inside, you know when your body is completing tasks, but your spirit is not agreed to or aligning to that. You know when you are surviving just based on your own calendar. I speak from experience looking at the amount of things that are on my calendar from day to day. And a lot of times I am floating through these weeks where I am just surviving. For too many of us, we have been praised for our endurance when what we actually need is relief and rest. We have been called dependable when we were actually depleted. We have been called strong when we were actually unsupported. We have been called resilient when sometimes we were simply out of any other options other than to keep pushing through. I want you to be careful here because you know I deeply believe in resilience. I did not name my book Rooted in Resilience for no reason. I believe in our capacity to survive. I believe we have the ability to adapt, to rise, and to carry wisdom through impossible circumstances. But resilience should never become an excuse for you to neglect yourself. Your ability to endure does not mean you were meant to carry everything. Let me say it again. Your ability to endure does not mean you were meant to carry everything. Some of us have been carrying family expectations, community needs, financial strain, caregiving roles, leadership responsibilities, emotional labor, spiritual labor, and even some private grief all at the same time. Because we are capable, because we are gifted, because we are rooted in the traditions of survival, people assume that we can just keep going. But capacity and capability is not consent. Just because you can hold a lot does not mean it's right for everyone to keep piling more upon you. So sometimes beginning again starts with admitting a simple truth. I am tired. Not because you're weak. It's not because you're failing. It's not because you are any of the things that people will try to make negative about this. This is because you are telling the truth, and the truth is always a doorway. So let's talk about grief. Grief changes everything. And we've talked about this in season 1. Grief changes your body. It changes your sense of time. It changes your appetite, attention, memory, capacity, the language you use. It changes how you move through rooms. So what matters the most is it can change even the things that matters to you, the kinds of noises you can tolerate, what you're willing to keep doing just because it's familiar. One of the hardest parts of grief is that the world often expects you to recover on a schedule. They think that there's a timeline. There's often so little room in our culture for sacred slowness. People know how to acknowledge loss in the beginning because that's easy. It's something tangible. They can see it. The loss is there. Services are happening. They see that you've lost something in your life, a job, etc. But they often do not know how to honor what grief becomes as time passes. They don't know how to hold the version of you that is still carrying sorrow months later, years later, quietly, faithfully, and tenderly. The grief is not just about death. We grieve relationships. We grieve seasons. We grieve identities and versions of ourselves. We grieve the versions of ourselves that existed before betrayal, before illness, before heartbreak, before disappointment, and before burnout. We grieve what we hoped would happen. We grieve what never got a chance to happen. There is grief in realizing that something you gave your heart to is no longer the right fit. There's a grief in outgrowing spaces you once prayed for. There is grief in being ready for a life your circumstances are still catching up to. I want you to know that no one is going to be necessarily sending you flowers for some of these types of grief, but it doesn't make it any less real. What grief often asks of us is not quick resolutions. It definitely asks for us to witness it. It asks for us to give it space. It's going to ask for ritual, and it's going to ask for our honesty. It's going to ask us to stop treating sorrow like it's an interruption and honor it like the information bringer that it actually is. Because grief teaches us something. It teaches us what mattered. It teaches us what was sacred. It teaches us what we love deeply enough to be changed by its absence. And sometimes it teaches us that where we are can no longer lie within us, and we can't continue to lie to ourselves. Now, disappointment looks a little bit different. Disappointment can be just as disorienting, but disappointment has a way of messing with your ability to trust people. Not just your trust in people, but also your trust in your own timing, your own discernment, and your own hope. Disappointment can make you hesitate. It makes you wonder if you were foolish for believing in the first place. It can make you shrink your expectations. So I want you to understand that sometimes you'll find yourself bracing yourself before good things even happen for you. And it makes you say that you don't want to get your hopes up. And it's understandable considering the things that you have been through and how you have been let down. Disappointment is painful because it often comes after you've invested time, you've invested energy, and you've invested things that you can't get back. It can come after prayer. It can come after effort, after showing up, after believing something would grow differently than the way it did. Maybe you did everything you knew to do and it still didn't work out. Maybe you loved well and you were still mishandled. Maybe you stayed faithful and you still found yourself being forgotten. Maybe you served, you built, you poured, you showed up, you prayed, you stretched yourself, trusted, and still ended up standing in a rubble of what you thought you would be in. Let's not lie about it. That hurts. And sometimes disappointment makes it hard. It makes it hard for us and it makes us hard. It turns us into guarded, cynical people and versions of ourselves. And it makes us confuse numbness with wisdom. It makes us think that expecting less will protect us more. But disappointment does not have to become your theology. It does not have to become the lens through which you interpret every possible future thing that you are going to experience. You can be disappointed and still be open to the things that are possibly going to come in the future. You can be hurt and still be honest. You can be cautious and still hopeful. You can be tired and still tender. Beginning again is not just about erasing the disappointment. It's about refusing to let disappointment define who you are and what is possible for you next. So we are going to take another break. And I want us to remember, as you see me in my Aya gear, that we have wearable ways to encourage and remind us of all of the things that we're learning here on the podcast. And you can go to the Aya shop and shop for all of these gears, t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, and you'll find us on Shopify at the-aya-shop-2.myshopify.com. And that is the place where we want you to tap in and get your gear. And I promise you, you'll find something there for you in all different sizes, all different options. And so we are going to take this break. And then when we come back, we're going to get a little bit deeper into this episode. We'll be back in just a second. Welcome back, everyone, to the podcast. And we are going to go a little bit deeper. And we're going to talk about beginning again as a sacred return. So first, let's talk about what does it actually mean to begin again? I'll tell you for me what it means. Beginning again is not a restart. I look at it as a return. You're returning to your root, which I'm really into talking about that. You are returning to your values, your body, your truths. You're returning to the people that are important to you. And so with this return, you're returning to a wisdom that you knew before you got stuck in this urgency that made you forget the things that are important. Beginning again is returning and asking, what is still true beneath all of this that you have been going through? What's true even after you're exhausted? What is true even after heartbreak and disappointment? What is still true even after the silence, the delay, the detours in life, the grief? Because if you can find what is still true, that gives you something to build from. You're not in this fantasy, this performance, this pressure, but you're trying to rebuild from truth. And what is still true is that you are tired, and this is okay to say because being tired is not laziness. Maybe what is still true is that your body has been trying to talk to you for months and you have just decided to not listen and to ignore it. Maybe what is still true is that you need care and not just discipline. Maybe what is still true is that you have outgrown a season that you were still trying to force to fit into your life. Maybe what is still true is that there is still life in you, even if it's quiet right now. The root's not flashy. The root is foundational. It says before you can bloom again, let's make sure you are grounded. Your root may be saying before you can perform strength, you have to recover your truth. It may be saying before you can ask what is next, you need to ask what is holding you in this current season. And sometimes what's holding you is simply a memory. It's the memory of your ancestors. It's the memory of what you survived in the past. It's the memory of what you were before the world demanded this fragmented version of yourself. It's the memory of what your spirit feels like when it's not performing for approval. So my advice is return there. I want to offer this simple framework for this season of beginning again. And the framework is an acronym. And you guys know that I love those because I feel like it makes it easier for us to remember these tools. And so the acronym is the word root, ROOT. R, remember what grounds you, not what impresses others, not what makes you look put together, but what actually grounds you, what brings you back to yourself, what makes you feel honest, what practices, people, songs, prayers, spaces, scents, rhythms remind you that you belong to yourself. Maybe it's the music that you play in the morning. Maybe it's the tea, like me, because I love drinking tea before the day begins. Maybe it's your favorite scripture. Maybe it's your prayer time. Maybe it's simply silence. If you're a journaler, maybe it's journaling or taking a walk without your cell phone with you. Maybe it's hearing your grandmother's voice in your memory telling you to slow down and to just breathe. Remember what has grounded you. The first O is owning what has hurt. Now, I know it's like, I do not want to remember the things that have hurt me. You cannot begin again honestly if you refuse to name what's wounded you, what has hurt you, what's exhausted you, what has caused disappointment, what cost you more than you realized. This is not about blame, just for the sake of causing or placing blame. This is about you having clarity. If you don't name the wound, you will not keep building your life around avoiding it without ever healing it. If you don't name the wound, you're going to keep building your life around the wound and never take the time to heal it. Own what has hurt. Don't get stuck there, but stop pretending that it didn't matter. All right? So you're remembering and you're owning. The second O is open yourself up to small practices. One of the traps that many of us fall into is believing that transformation has to be dramatic in order for it to be real. Small practices are just as holy. They're just as sacred. Drinking a glass of water, 5 deep breaths, 10-minute walks, putting in a boundary, a text asking for help when you need the help. And I'm pausing on that because some of us are really bad with asking for help. Turning off the noise, going to bed a little bit earlier, learning how to say no the first time and waiting until the fourth time to say no. Not over explaining your need for rest. It's just simply, I need a rest. I need to take a break. Choose one honest thing today. Instead of trying to fix your whole life between now and the end of the week, find a small practice that matters to you that can teach your body that care is not just something you do in emergencies. It can become part of your rhythm. And then the T is tend what is still alive. I feel like this one matters the most. Yes, we want to remember. Yes, we want to own. Yes, we want to open ourselves up. But because after burnout and after grief and after disappointment, it's easy to focus only on the thing that is dead, the thing that failed, the thing that ended, and the thing that hurt. But you're ignoring the things that are still alive. What about those things? Is there still desire in you? Is there still creativity in you? Is there still tenderness in you? Is there still faith in you? Is your curiosity still intact? Is there still a part of you that still wants to move more and wants more for life, wants more things to hope for, believes things and imagines things, prays and reaches? That's what you should be tending to. Don't despise the things that are small. Do not mock your own emerging because it doesn't look dramatic enough. Tend to what is still alive. That is how beginning again starts. And sometimes beginning again will also require you to release some things. Release the expectations, the old identities, the obligations that never really were truly you. Release the timelines that are hurting you more than they're helping you. Sometimes we have to let go of the fantasy that you can heal while staying loyal to everything that depleted you. Sometimes things cannot come with you. And it's not because you're bitter. They just can't come. You're not ungrateful. Your next season sometimes requires a different kind of honesty. It requires you to release some things, and releasing things is not always about losing or loss. Sometimes this release is about alignment. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back, and we are going to go into an Aya pause reflection for this episode. So stay tuned, hold tight, and we will be back in just a second. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. And we are going to go into the part of the episode for those of you who are new, where we take a pause. And one of the concepts in my book is the Aya pause. And the reason why I felt inspired to put this in there is because we often rush through and don't take time to reflect and to take a break from the hustle that our lives are often in from day to day. So, wherever you are, if you can, I want you to take a moment to reset yourself and take a deep breath with me. I want you to inhale through your nose and exhale. Let's do that again. Inhale through your nose and exhale. Let's do that one last time. Inhale through your nose and exhale. Now, I want you to release. Ask yourself quietly, what part of me is tired beyond words? What have I been calling a delay that may actually be grief? What am I trying to force that no longer fits who I am becoming? What still feels true in me even now? And what have I been carrying alone that was never meant to be mine all by myself? So now I want you to look at what it would look like to begin again from truth instead of the pressure. And as you reflect on that, I just want you to take some more breathing in and out and let these questions sit with you. You don't need to rush to answer them. Sometimes the sacred thing is not about the answer. Sometimes it is about the willingness to ask the right questions and to stay with it long enough to allow honesty to rise in you. If you're listening today and you feel ashamed that you need to start over again, I want you to say this gently and clearly to yourself. Returning is not failure. Needing to begin again does not mean that you didn't learn anything prior to this. It doesn't mean that the last season you were in was wasted. It doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that you're incapable. Sometimes it just simply means that life happened. It can mean that grief interrupted your timeline. Maybe it's your body demanding what your mind kept trying to postpone. Sometimes it can mean that you've evolved enough that what once worked no longer does. This is not about failure. This is again about information. Healing is not a one-time graduation. You're having a relationship with this process. You're going to have to revisit things. You're going to have to return to some lessons. You're going to have to meet some old wounds, but you're going to meet them with new wisdoms. When you start seeing the patterns, that'll allow you to see things clearer. And when you see things clearer, you'll be able to hear your own needs more quickly. You're going to interrupt these old habits that you've had a lot sooner because of this knowledge and clarity that you now have. So stop calling survival the same thing. All right? Survival and peace are not equal. When you realize that, you are now growing. And if you're becoming and beginning again, do not talk to yourself as if you're starting from scratch, because you're not. You're starting from an experienced place. And when you start from that experienced place, you have the memory that you can tap into, that you can pull from, that gives you a place to begin with discernment. And discernment is really important because you're starting from having survived what you once probably thought was going to break you and push you down to never recover. And for the person who has always been that strong one, that dependable one, the one everybody calls, the one who knows how to keep things moving, I need you to hear this too. You may be the root for a whole lot of people, but even roots need to be nourished. They need water, they need protection, and they need healthy soil. So now is the time for you to be not only that to others, but to be that to yourself. Because just because you're foundational doesn't mean that you're invincible. You have a right and you are allowed to receive care without earning collapse first. You're allowed to need people. There's no shame in that. You're allowed to say that you can't carry something alone, and you are not weak for saying that you need tenderness. Allow yourself to let someone else hold the circle for a while. It doesn't have to always be you. And I need you all to remember that and embody that. So before we exit out of this aya pause, I want you to take one more breath. Inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Let all of these things sit in your spirit and land with you. And when we come back, we're going to jump into our closing reflections and our calls to action. We'll be back in just a second. Before we close out, I want to leave us with a few truths. The first is that you're allowed to begin again and you're allowed to do it slowly. I want you to also connect this to the fact that if you're beginning again with grief still in the room, you are allowed to do that. Don't feel like because you're grieving that you have to stop in that moment. You have the ability to begin again and pushing forward with the grief still present. You're also allowed to do this beginning while you're tired and without having every answer to all the questions that may be swirling around in your head and around you. Know that beginning again is allowed to happen without pretending that the disappointment that you experienced didn't wound you, because it did. And not acknowledging that and not being truthful is a disservice to you. You're allowed to begin again and do it with small steps and do it by returning to your root, and don't feel like you have to perform a fresh start for other people around you. You're allowed to believe that something meaningful can still grow from here. From here, from even there, and all the different places that seem like nothing can grow from there, it can especially grow from those places. I want you to think about the Aya, the concept that I use not only for my business, but for this podcast and for us to set a framework. The Aya is a fern. A fern doesn't wait for the perfect conditions. So the one thing you'll know about a fern is that it can grow if it's under a rock, it can grow in the shade, it can grow in harsh places, it can grow where fragility would be understandable, but it still does it anyway. That is what Aya teaches us. It teaches us that pain is beautiful, but struggle shouldn't be romanticized. The pain is only beautiful because it shows that we're still feeling, we're still human, we're still existing, we're still moving forward. And it shows us that we have the ability to endure. That endurance, that self-reliance, that sacred resistance, and that spiritual fortitude that we have can coexist within the tenderness. You can be soft and you can still survive. You can be weary because God knows many of us are weary in this time and in this season of our lives, but we're still rooted. You can be disappointed and you can still be open. You can be grieving and still be coming. This is the kind of beginning that I personally believe in, and I believe that you have the ability to also move in and thrive. So here, for your closing Aya pause, like an extra one for this week, I want you to ask yourself, where have you been living from pressure instead of truth? What does beginning again look like for you in this season? And what are you ready to stop carrying alone? I want you to think about practices that can help you return to yourself this week. Think about things in you that are still alive enough for you to tend to. Sit with it, journal it, pray about it, breathe in it, but carry it into your week. And I want you to do it in a gentle, a compassionate, and a graceful manner. Thank you again for those of you who have returned back with me to this beginning of episode number 21. For those of you who have joined me for the first time, welcome again. And I'm so glad that you got to experience this journey with us for this week. If this episode has resonated with you in any kind of way, remember we need you to like, share with someone that's standing on the edge of their own beginning again. You may know someone who is tired. You may know someone who is grieving, someone who's dealing with disappointment and needs to remember that they're not starting from nothing. They may be a person that's returning to their personal truths. Make sure that you share this with them. Let them know this has been a tool. This has been a resource for you. And remember again, we want you to subscribe and follow and share the IOA podcast wherever you listen or watch. And you can also stay connected to me through the broader Aya community to get more reflections, more practices, more resources that support healing, grounding, and collective care. And the way that you can do that is by tapping into our Substack community, which is a wonderful way for you to be able to reach out, get additional resources, and you can find us at theioway.substack.com. I share additional space for you to talk, reflect back, to connect beyond this episode, to get additional Aya pause prompts, things for you to journal, things for you to think about and reflect on. And it extends it beyond what we just simply have here on the podcast on Tuesdays. I want you to remember that until we get back together next week, I want you to breathe deeply. I want you to move gently. And I also want you to trust that what is growing in you does not have to be rushed in order for it to be real. Remember that we are starting with and ending with truth. And as we begin again, that truth is going to be the thing that is going to lead us forward. So until next time, Please take care of yourself, be kind, and make sure that you heal loudly and live softly. This is the IOA Podcast, a space for truth, tenderness, and becoming whole, one breath at a time. Make sure to like and subscribe.